You're listening to the Limitless Leadership Podcast, the podcast designed to help automotive repair shops learn how to lead, coach, train, and manage their team better by sharing proven techniques and thought-provoking interviews from industry leaders. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's today's episode.
Hey everyone, before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know about the training that Limitless Leadership is doing in Dallas, January 16th through the 18th, 2025. We're going to be doing a leadership, performance, sales, and technician hybrid type of training. No one else in the industry is doing this. Hosted by Standard Motor Products, will be in Dallas at their facility, January 16th through the 18th. If you have any interest in joining, this training is industry leading. Reach out to me via email, josh@thebeardedleader.com for more information. Hope to see you there. Now, let's get into today's episode. All right, everyone, jumping right back into another great episode. Today, we're joined by a technician with over 30 years of experience. He is the host of the Jaded Mechanic podcast, an incredible guest that we have, my friend Jeff Compton, also known as the Jaded Mechanic. Jeff, thanks for joining us, man.
Good afternoon, Josh. How's everybody today? Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on. We were just talking right before we got on. You interviewed Charles, the humble mechanic, and I'm looking forward to hearing that episode. And my episode with him will come out probably, let's say within a month or so. I interviewed him at SEMA and Apex just last week and saw the car that he actually had brought to SEMA and Apex that he finished building. An absolutely incredible ride. So he is a super cool dude. I'm honored to be in the same field that guy is in. He's just a great guy.
As am I, Jeff. Charles is a great guy. You know, what's great about Charles and you, my friend, is your amazing beards. As the bearded leader, I will talk about how amazing your beard is. And if you're not watching this episode, but you're listening, I would encourage you to get over to my YouTube channel, which is at The Bearded Leader, to check out Jeff's incredible beard.
Yeah. I'm pretty blessed in that. I can't grow hair on the top of my head anymore, but it comes into the face pretty easy. So.
Hey man, you and me both, brother. Hey, Jeff, let's get right into it, man. Share with the audience who you are, what you do, how you do it. Who is Mr. Jeff Compton?
So in a nutshell, Jeff Compton is a technician with right around 30 years of experience fixing everything from highway tractors to construction equipment to every pretty much make, model of car, with the exception of like some high-end stuff. Done a dealership life, done the independent life, done the road service life, a little bit of mobile. I've done it. And the Jeff that became the Jaded Mechanic was just something that kind of came along with, I've always been very involved in the social media side of things, of having conversations. I'm not a person that can normally sit and watch TV, so I spent a lot of time on Facebook, just in groups with other technicians talking about the industry, and made quite a few friends and a couple enemies from doing that. I got known as somebody that's very frank and to the point, blunt, and passionate about what I think is this industry needs to improve on, where it needs to go, why it's been such a grind for so many of us. And I wear my heart on my sleeve. I've shared kind of what I've gone through to get to where I am at this industry. And I'm only doing it because I don't want everybody to have to go through everything I went through. That's kind of the purpose that I've been given by whoever, whatever. Is that I'm here to, first and foremost, is fix cars. There is no really other job that I've ever wanted to do. And then to make it so that the next generation coming in doesn't have to fight the way I had to fight. So that's the number one goal every day when I wake up, is just to try to make it better.
I love that, man. Hey, and I'll just share with you, Jeff, we don't shy away from talking about faith. I mean, whether you wanted to say it or not, to me, I'm a big believer in the man upstairs. And I know that God has provided each of us an opportunity to live out a purpose and a calling that he has for our life. And I really appreciate the fact that you've obeyed the call, if you will. And you've said, you know what, I'm going to take the reins on this and be a voice in an industry that really needs a positive voice. And so the irony to me is the fact that your podcast is the Jaded Mechanic podcast, But as I shared with you prior to going live on this episode, man, you represent the industry in a place where if you're jaded, you do a good job of hiding it, because I see the way that you communicate with folks, whether it be online, in person, and I see this level of positivity and the spirit of upliftingness, if that's even a word, where you're a motivator, you're an inspirer. And man, I want to commend you for that, because that's something that this industry desperately needs. Let me ask you, Jeff, where did the term, or where did the name, the Jaded Mechanic, come from to begin with?
So that kind of is at the beginning of this journey of my podcast, and it started out with I gave glory to Lucas, and David. Lucas and David had their podcast, and I've known Lucas for the better part of almost 20 years through social media interaction on Facebook. Never met the gentleman, just very early on, we ended up in the same Facebook group and had lots of candor back and forth about this industry. And when I was sitting off now unemployed during COVID, he kind of knew the headspace that I was in and where I'd always felt that this industry lacked and failed, and where I felt it needed to go. And he kind of just had me on as a guest. And I don't think anybody thought it would happen the way it did, but it just blew up. It blew up in the sense that there'd never been a technician that had been in that group on their platform that had spoke the way I did in terms of where I was. And I wasn't in a good place. It wasn't like I wasn't suicidal. I was just very angry with the industry. I was very angry with the world. I was angry at the pandemic. I was angry at everything. And we talked, and it wasn't just like me talking about the pandemic. It was me talking about what this industry had done to me, what it had made me so angry about, why I wouldn't recommend this as a career to a young person if they put their hand up and said, "Hey, I'm good with my hands. What do I do?" I would have told them, "Don't do this." And I'll be the first to admit it can flip flop back and forth for me still some days, right? I get really frustrated. I'm like, "Oh, what am I doing? I'm doing what God put me to do." It's as simple as that. There's nothing ever that's clicked with me. So I did their podcast, and I just kind of ended it with the tagline. It's like, after 20 plus years of this, of course I'm jaded. I have PTSD from this. And Lucas, seeing the effect that it had, the feedback, he put me on this path to sharing all my perspectives and thoughts and opinions and story. And it's blown up. It's been when I go to an event now and perfect strangers stop me and say, you know, this story that you told, or this guest that you had on, like, changed my trajectory of my career. Like, I get goosebumps just even talking about it.
You're giving me goosebumps right now, man. Yeah. So I do know what you mean. To me, this is just, it's living proof that you're doing exactly what you were called to do. And, we have to go through things and subsequently grow through things. And there's so many obstacles and challenges that we experience in our life, where in the moment it just feels like the weight of the world is on our shoulders. But when you look up and realize, hey, you know what? I took action beyond that time. Even though I was feeling a certain kind of way, I decided to take action. And many of us, unfortunately, won't take action because we don't feel ready. We don't feel confident. We're not motivated. It's not the right time. And I think, Jeff, you and I would probably both agree that the right time is right now. If you're waiting, the best time to start was yesterday. It's like, let's do this thing. And because confidence and motivation is going to follow that action.
Everybody has a story of, I wish I had. You know what I mean? I wish I had said something the last time I saw someone, or I wish that I had not bit my tongue when something wasn't happening. I wish when I'd seen something happening in public, I did more than what I did. We don't. So I've never been the type to turn away. I've been the type that if something needs to be said, I'm just going to say it, because where I'm blessed with or cursed with is that I don't do this for acceptance. I don't do it for pats on the backs. It doesn't matter to me. I have a lot of friends within the industry, and but I have a very small circle. I don't need acceptance. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to love me. You can hate me. I'm good with it either way. It does not change my confidence about myself. It doesn't change my direction. It's just, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and it's still going to be me. And I'm so fortunate to have come to comfort with that, because I think once you have that, there's no ceiling for where people want to go. Right. Mm-hmm. So this is not acceptance. And this has always been, there are people, I have my detractors, and I'm totally listening. I like them too. It doesn't change. If anything, it just gives me more motivation to stay the course.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we have to do is I'm trying to make it better for people coming along. That's it, and people that want to challenge me on what I have to say. Good. Let's have the conversation. That's what this is all about. We're not going to agree on everything, but if I start to show you a perspective of me and you show me more of your perspective, we come to a better place. I never appreciated shop owners until I started to really network with David and Lucas.
Mm.
Do I excuse a lot of the shop owners in this industry? No, not at all. I think they're very removed from the reality of what they have and what they need to do, but I understand better why they're there now. And that's been key.
I think what you're also describing is this sake of understanding, because you mentioned you're right. We don't have to agree on everything, but we can disagree without being disagreeable. And we can do that through seeking first to understand, then to be understood.
Yeah.
Right.
Just going to echo those words. Lucas taught me that, because he's the first to say I lived in a bubble and I made snap judgments. He wasn't wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've learned to ask more questions before I open my trap and say what I think. And
That's
most
it,
of the time,
man.
what still was going to come out was going to come out, but it comes out in a more effective manner.
Yes, love that. I think you're just really describing the concept of communication. When we think about the word communication, we're often thinking about the words coming out of our mouth and not the words coming into our ears. And if we're asking
Yes.
better questions and asking more questions, we can focus more on listening versus hearing. We can listen to understand instead of just listening to reply. And man, I think you might agree with this too, Jeff. As a podcast host, we have to get better at being able to listen to understand rather than listening to reply. You talked about being in the industry for 30 plus years now. You've gone through a lot of things that have prompted you to be jaded at times, but thankfully you've been able to consider a shift in perspective. Let me ask you, how'd you get started in the industry?
So my father was an auto body collision technician and had been. So I'd grown up around cars from my earliest memories of cars. Um, he always worked at home as well as held a shop, like a shop job. So it was just always I was around, body repair. I was around sandpaper and primer dust and paint fumes and all this stuff. I watched him weld on cars from the time I was a young boy. So I mean, I just grew up around it, and it didn't really grab a hold of me until I was in high school, and then I wanted a car. And I didn't. I'd always held a job. I'd had a paper route from the time I was 7. I worked in restaurants. I worked for farmers on weekends. Work's never been a problem. So when I needed a car, because I lived in a more rural area and a lot of my friends lived away, we bought an old car and we started fixing it up. Right? That's what a lot of us, I think, in this industry. That's how we get our feet wet. So, but I never cared what a car looked like. If it had a dent in the fender, didn't bother me. Didn't care if the fenders were different colors. I just was about making it go fast. And that was, so I never appreciated what my father did till he was gone. When I now try to do what he does, if I have to, put some straighten a panel or whatever. So is it in my DNA? I don't know. But I knew that, like, he warned me, don't pick this as a career. It'll ruin your body. It'll ruin your attitude. You'll hate cars. He wasn't completely wrong. But it just, I couldn't see myself doing that. I worked in restaurants where I, cleaned the restaurant. Like I said, I've messed around on farms. This is what I love to do. This is what I'm really good at doing. And maybe it is in my genes. Maybe I'm just picked to do it. So that's kind of how I got started. And I've never really stopped.
Okay.
The closest I got away from it was, I went through the local Goodyear tire plant and did the training to get into work on the machinery within the plant, and went through the final interviews, had an extra interview, and it was like they just didn't think personality wise I'd necessarily click with everybody, but it wasn't a situation that the technical ability wasn't there. So that's the closest I've been to getting an out.
Okay.
I'd say that. So, and for whatever reason, the man upstairs decided that, you don't get an out. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So, I wasn't planning on asking this question, but the more you talk about how you got into the industry, I've heard this similar kind of path from a lot of folks before. I've had a lot of guests on the show too who have described something similar, and it begins with a work ethic, and it begins with it's like started at a young age. I mean, we're not talking 16 years old like the typical workforce today. We're talking like, I mean, single digits age, right? I mean, paper route when you were 7. Let me ask you, Jeff, where's the direction of the technician skill set or training going? And the reason I'm asking this question is from my vantage point, I see a lot of young people, and I'm talking 16, 17-year-old kids who they don't really care to get a license. They don't care about cars like we did when we turned 15, get a permit, 16, get a license. That was the first thing we wanted to do. And I think a lot of our listeners would agree that it just feels like the work ethic of youth is not where it was when we were kids. Can you speak to that and how it plays a role in technicians in the industry?
Yeah, for sure. The young people today, like everybody sometimes wants to say, oh, they're lazy. They're not lazy. It's just that they would know, like they're more, if somebody had told me at 8 to go out and pick the rocks out of the field because they're going to plow it next week, I wouldn't have asked them why the rocks needed to be picked out. I would have just understood that it was what was I was tasked to do, and I would go out and do it. This generation now, immediately the brains go, is there a better way to get the rocks out of the field without me having to stand bent over for the next 12 hours? And it just goes on to that. How their brains work is just different. And they're not lazy. It's just, they don't have that passion for cars. Like they're really, we're going to see them where they're going to ride in the passenger seat of the car to work, and it's going to drive themselves there. It already happens. You can get in a Tesla loop in Vegas and like ride around and nobody's touching anything. The car's just doing it. They're going to go to work every day fixing those type of cars with not necessarily any kind of passion towards what a car used to feel and smell and look like to them, right? It's just, it's a cell phone to them. That's what it is. So they're not, the challenges become is that the way they consume information and instruction is different. They don't ever accept that it's just, that's the way. They don't accept that as an answer. Now, if they want to take on a task, they want to see how the task was done. Like a good apprentice that I had, before he'd ever take a door panel off a car, he would look at YouTube to know if there was already a video up on how to do it so he didn't break anything. Like, it's such a foreign thing, because when I started, there wasn't YouTube. There wasn't Facebook. There wasn't a computer in every shop. So you just had to start and hope you didn't break anything or ask somebody. Now, they've got how many millions of people out there that they can ask. It's a different, we say they're lazy, they don't want to do the work, but really they've only ever known is how to ask.
That's so
from the
good.
way they're instructed at school.
So they need the why then, because when the why is clear, the how is easy. So,
Yes.
so really, I'm going to shift my own perspective here and say they're the smarter ones. We're the ones who are just kind of the blind leading the blind, if you will.
Yeah, well, I'll challenge this. Like our generation or my generation, we just knew how to make it work. And their generation is very much like, if I can't make it work, oh well, I'll just go on to the next thing. My generation, I think if you dropped us off in the middle of the Arctic with like 3 different old broke cars of 3 different manufacturers, we'd be able to drive 1 car home. Whereas that generation, I think now the fundamentals, it's not the fundamentals aren't there. They would just see the immediate obstacle and be like, okay, I don't know what to do next. They don't think on the fly, I guess is what I'm trying to say, the way I think the older heads had to be forced to do it. I don't know if it's right or wrong, better or worse. I'm not sure. It's just different. And that's the obstacle I run into now when I work with some of the young people is you go over and 10 minutes later, you're like, why is not a door panel off? He's still watching the video to see, what's left to get it off. And I'm like, okay, just start on it. Just, start. Because when you don't develop critical thinking when you watch how other people do it. That's the thing too. You don't. And you don't necessarily get the same problem solving if you don't break a few things. Nobody ever made an omelet without breaking an egg. So you have to sometimes get in there and just be, I think, the way children are, how they learn. I think you could just in life, we have to continue to do that type of learning.
Yeah. So good. Well, Jeff, as you know, this is a leadership podcast. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Number one, what does leadership mean to you? And before you answer that question, the second thing is this: from a Jaded Mechanic's perspective, having gone through what you've gone through over the years, working for multiple shop owners, How has leadership in your mind changed over the years? What, like, by your own definition?
So leadership has changed in the sense that I think more of us now, from my generation, we were our own leaders. We were our own motivators. The way we were paid, oftentimes, the way we had to get through like, here's a car, go fix it.
Mhm.
We didn't really rely on a leader. Like there might have been an appointed foreman, an appointed senior master, whatever, but that wasn't our leader. Day to day, we just got through it. Whereas now I see leadership has changed to where it becomes necessary. And what I like is I think sometimes is the liability is falling back on who it should have fallen on, is the
Mm.
leader, right? We talked about bottlenecks. So the leader's role is to remove the bottlenecks. The leader's role is to be the middle person between what needs to get done and how it's going to get done. That buffer of communication in between the two, because like technicians, sometimes we're not effective communicators, right? So we can understand what the task is that you want done, but that's the how and sometimes the why, is where we struggle. Just, you want that part taken off that car and put on a new one. We understand that. The why sometimes, if we know it's not going to fix it, right? And the customers come in, stuff like that. So the leadership role has gotten to be more vital now. And I see it and I like the conversations that are happening now where we're starting to say, if it's your business, you're the leader. I like that. My thing as a leader has been, how do I empower the next people coming along to be a lot like how I was without being so negative? That's the trick, is how do I
Okay.
lead them into success without becoming jaded?
Yeah. So how do you do it then?
Slow down, take a breath. Remember that they're not me. Remember that I have some skills and talents that they don't have. They have ones that I don't have. And we have to come to the understanding of how do we work together on that. So, I used to get very frustrated when they just, because to me it seems simple, just do this and then do that and then do that. I remember that like a lot of the times I didn't really get proficient at doing something until I'd done it two, three, four times. So I have to remember that that's their first time. And then the next time might be something completely different. It's like, you know, I say it all the time, it's a dealership versus the independent shop. You may do a cylinder head on a Chevy truck at a dealership, and then you do one 2 days later. You may do a cylinder head on a Chevy truck on a Monday in an independent shop, and you might not take another one off until a year later, right? Because that before that same thing comes in. It's two very different mindsets and two very different talent pools that fit that key. So when I'm talking to people, and like I talk to my sponsors, Promotive, and they're like, how do we get the right type of technician for the right type of shop? We've got to know exactly what their workflow looks like, because it's a very different tech that can go and do a cylinder head on anything in any make and model versus one that can do it so fast and make your head spin because it's just repetition, it's muscle memory. Some guys get by on muscle memory, others guys just get by on some innate understanding of how this should probably come apart,
Mm. Yeah.
and not all of us have that.
Right. So as a leadership coach, communication is often one of the challenges at the root of any situation that people are navigating. Let me ask you this, because you're a phenomenal communicator. I mean, you can probably count on one or two hands the amount of technicians who lead their or host their own podcast, right? So, but we both know that you're an anomaly given what you just shared as well. I mean, there's communication could be improved, not just amongst technicians, but of course across the entire shop. Let me ask you, what can those of us who are listening who are not technicians, what can we do to better communicate more effectively with technicians? And conversely, what do technicians need to do to better communicate with non-technicians?
So the first part of that's going to get really unpopular for a lot of opinion in it. The reality is that like I've told owners for a long time, and again, some of them can, but if they're now solving a problem that you couldn't solve, I understand the logistics of what it has to be effective and efficient and productive and profitable. I understand all of that. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just you have to step back and let it happen. Whatever it takes for them to get through and get the problem solved is going to be what it is.
Yeah.
And don't beat them up on the back end of it because it took longer than what you felt it should. Because at the end of the day, If I hire a guy to go dig a pool for me in my backyard because I can't dig a pool, I can get all upset about how long it should cost and how long it took. But the reality is, I decided it was going to get done, and I'm now responsible for making sure that it got done, and I have to pay the person to do it. Too many times in this industry, we jump to it and go, I would have done that. The reality is, a lot of technicians now working for a lot of owners, the owner couldn't have done what the tech did. So, to be a good leader comes back to understanding that they have a skill set that you don't have, just like they have one. You have a skill set that they don't have. I can't run a business. Okay. I'm not wired that way. So then the leadership side of what a technician needs to understand better is that they're tasked with a very difficult problem every day of making this business work. And we have to be responsible and mature and adult and realize that we're tasked with something and we have to get that task done. That's what we're contracted to do. You tell yourself, you tell your employer that I'm an excellent mechanic, that I can fix cars. Go out there and fix cars. Go out and do what you're told to do. Don't try to tell them what they're doing wrong in their business. You might be right in what you're telling them, but leave that to somebody like me. It doesn't make your day to day better to be constantly challenging them on what they're doing wrong from a business standpoint.
Well, man, I appreciate you sharing that. And I want to go back and revisit something you just shared, because what you thought might be an unpopular answer, I think might be more popular than you think. And here's why. Again, I'm going to keep on saying this, but as a leadership coach, I constantly am coaching on the concept of taking action. And you might make a mistake. You might fail along the way, but I think everyone listening knows that if you fail at something, that doesn't make you a failure. If you lose, it doesn't make you a loser. And so too many of us are allowing our actions to become our identity. And so an owner and a technician can both understand and recognize that it might take longer than one person expected. There might be some mistakes that occur along the way in an effort to learn the right way for the next time. And so as owners, as leaders in the shop, we have to give grace and provide understanding, especially in an area that we don't have full understanding. And trust is the key word here. Trust is really lacking in this industry. And it goes both ways, not only with our guests, but also with our team. We've got to trust in our team to make the right decisions and take the right actions. And sometimes mistakes might get made, but this is how we learn and this is how we grow.
Yeah. Nobody's processes ever came from someone else, right? Most of the best effective processes we had to develop off of mistakes.
Strong.
So, you can sit there and say, like we were talking earlier, a blueprint for a shop is just like a blueprint for a restaurant. I'll challenge you that it's not, because it's easier to find a waitress than it is to find a mechanic. And if I can get 10 good waiters or waitresses, I can give pretty much the same experience in most of my restaurants. The food might even be a little different, but I can make up the quality of food with the quality of my waiter or waitress. Liken that to your service advisor. If the car still leaves broke, it doesn't matter about all the smiles and the coffee in the waiting room and all that jazz. The car's still broken. Your reputation still will be damaged because you didn't do what you were tasked to do.
So good. So good, man. This is, I think we can go for a while, but we got a couple questions left for you, Jeff. I'll ask you. So you've already shared that early on in your career, and still at times you're thinking, man, like, should I have gotten into this career? Your father even encouraged you to not get into this career. So let me ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is considering this as a career?
So you got to be ate up with the sickness of it. You have to be absolutely obsessed with a car. And I don't mean, so if you just enjoy taking anything apart, this is not necessarily the field for you. You can be successful in it. But the true people that I just like, they eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff, cars. Like, that's not like they eat, sleep, and breathe how a computer works or a washing machine or an HVAC system. They eat, sleep, and breathe cars. They were turned on by cars at a very young age. That's the passion you need. How to make that become where you don't get burnt out on it is you have to find the right employer that nurtures that love for the automobile and nurtures that love for learning how to do it better. If you get somebody and they're just employing you and they don't care that you love what you do, you're not going to be a good fit. So That's my advice for the young people that want to be successful technicians is you have to love cars. Not just that you enjoy taking things apart and somebody told you as guidance counselor that you should become a technician because you might be on the spectrum and don't read well. That's the wrong advice. You have to absolutely be ate up with problem solving and loving cars.
Jeff, I might put you on the spot here. I'll say this, man. Like I believe that there are a lot of listeners. There's a lot of us who have been waiting and waiting and waiting to discover our purpose and to really understand what our purpose is. And man, I'm grateful and thankful that you have been able to discover your purpose. I would say you should consider yourself blessed because a lot of folks haven't. But I'm saying that to say this. I believe that our purpose is often derived from our passion. And when you talk about how you've got to be passionate about that, you've got to love cars. You got to really, what do you say, ate up with a sickness about cars. To me, that tells me you were passionate about cars, about this industry years ago. You knew there was going to be some heartache. You knew there was going to be some things that you're going to go through, and that's turned into some jaded feelings at times. But ultimately, what we're both talking about is you've discovered your purpose through your passion. And so I think for a lot of folks, I really, if you're listening, I'm encouraging you to really take what Jeff is sharing and heed these words. If he's talking about we get to nurture a love for folks who have entered into this industry for a reason, and they may not even know what that reason is yet, because I don't think that you knew 30 years ago what your purpose was, but you found it through your passion. And so if I can provide any unsolicited advice, listen to Jeff's words, man. He is great at what he does. He's got a phenomenal podcast. I'm going to say it again, the Jaded Mechanic podcast. Let me ask you, Jeff, where can we find you on social media? Where can we go to listen to the Jaded Mechanic podcast?
So we're pretty easy to find. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. I listen on Podbean. Just about anywhere that you can stream a podcast or you can stream music, you're going to find us. We're way up there in terms of we're pretty available now. The numbers are tracking good. That could all change tomorrow. I don't do it because I need, money. I don't do it for money. I don't do it for accolades. I just do it because I'm trying to, make people communicate more effectively with each other within the shops. That's it. Understand better why the technicians the way they are, understand better what the owner is trying to achieve at the end of the day. And as long as both people are going forward with good intentions, respect for one another, there is no limit to what you can do in this industry. It's just understanding better what we have to do.
When you say that, Jeff, that it's limitless what you can do in the industry. So, man, I really appreciate you being here. What we do need is motivation. And having listened to a number of your podcasts, I definitely walk away better than I was before. I walk away motivated. It's incredibly educational, which I think I really admire and respect. And so thank you for that.
That's just an unfortunate byproduct. I don't know, because I'm by far the smartest. Most of the time when I'm doing an interview, I'm not the smartest guy in the room.
Hey, brother, man, you and me both. So now, who's the smartest one here? Because I often feel the exact same way. So, man, we're both on the struggle bus today, but things are well. Man, I appreciate you for being here. My last question to you, Jeff, is greatest advice that you've ever received from a mentor or a coach?
So I've never sat down with an actual, official business coach to receive coaching. We've sat down with some of the top minds in this industry to have conversation, to share perspective. The best advice I've ever gotten was still like and I'll repeat it because we talked about it earlier, was from Lucas Underwood, my brother Lucas, who just said, seek first to understand, which to me in a nutshell just means before somebody is done, before you say what you think you need to say, let them finish what they say.
Yes. Nailed it.
And then process it.
Awesome. Well, Jeff Compton, AKA the Jaded Mechanic, thank you for being on the Limitless Leadership podcast, my brother.
Thank you, Josh. It was a pleasure to be here, man. Anytime, I'd love to come back.
This will not be your first, your last time rather. And thank you for tuning into today's episode. Each episode, we look to transform our leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results. Have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to smile today. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.